renting your home versus buying your home. So I've seen this conversation floating around now for the last couple of months, right? And I'm going to give you my take on it based on some facts, okay? So I'm going to create a scenario because there's so many variables that people will say, but what about if this? What if my company rented it for me? What about this? What about that? So I'm going to create a scenario with a particular finite terms and conditions, right? So and I asked on social whether you guys want me to use real stats based on one of my previous experiences, one of my previous homes, or whether you want me to use just airy-fairy made-up numbers, and you voted for use real facts and stats. And I'm going to give you the real facts and stats, right? So when I heard this, argument about buying a home versus renting a home, so many people were saying renting your home is better. So I was like, okay, I'm trying to understand why. So when I asked a couple of questions on social media, the main thing was, there was two main things that came back. Number one, you can use your capital to that you don't invest into a home, into an investment or alike. And number two is you're able to move very quickly and very easily. Now, first of all, I'm not going to address that right now. I'm going to go straight into it, okay? And I'm going to give you guys some real facts and stats. So I bought a property in Sydenham in 2005 for £240,000. Okay, it was a 2-bedroom, masonette, first floor. It was an ex-local, front garden shared, back garden shared, on a beautiful road, and I was living at home at the time, and I was renting this property out. So I know the rental figures as well. So I'm going to give you the facts. So I got it at 240,000, right? My deposit's 10%, so 24k. So I borrowed 216 grand from the bank. At the time, my stamp duty was £7,000 or 7.2. So I'm going to try and get some slides somewhere so you guys can see the numbers and see how this all looks on paper, right? So legal fees, you've got to pay the conveyancing, you've got to pay your lawyer to do the work. Let's call that £1,250. It may have been £250 plus minus. We're not going to argue over £250. You need to have your valuation, of course. So the valuation is, most of you know, is for the lender's purpose, right? It's not to secure yourself. That's different from a home buyers. This is so the lender knows that what they are giving you money against or lending you money against is secure for their own investment in case they need to come and repossess. So the valuation, £500. You've got to pay your broker or a product fee for choosing a particular product. Let's call that £1,200, and that can be added to your loan, or you can pay it outright. Okay, I've just classed this for the purposes of this task, paying it upfront. Okay. So maintenance. So this was one of the things that people spoke about, right? They said, they can rent a home, and any issues that happen, the boiler goes down, they can just give it to the landlord and it's their problem, etc. Some boilers are problematic, but they're not to the extent where, anyway, I'm not going to go there right now. But based on the national average, it's 1%, yeah, of your purchase price. So I did the 1% of the purchase price over 8 years, okay, and that's totaling £19,200, okay. So over 8 years, £20,000 is just short. 20k is for maintenance. So your leaking roof, your gutter, whatever else you have issues with. So yes, as a renter, you do not need to pay that cost. Next, your mortgage cost. So I went for an interest-only mortgage at the time. Now, that was costing me £700 odd, £719 a month. That was just short of 4%, okay? Rates are now circa 2%, call it, yeah? So they're even lower. But for the purposes of this exercise, I'm going to give you two. I'm going to give you the monthly on interest only, where you owe the full balance at the end, and then I'm going to give you repayments. The repayments is a little bit more, so you're taking away chunks of your mortgage, so you're reducing the capital, the amount that you owe at the end. In fact, it will zero out at the end. Okay, so you pay a little bit more And that would have been, if I had gone for repayments based on that kind of rate, it would have cost me £1,140. So there is some money. Let me do a quick maths what the difference between the two is, yeah? So we're talking £421 between the two, okay? If I went for a repayment, I would have been paying £400 more, but I would have owed nothing at the end of the term. But I only owed it for 8 years. Now, the total cost of acquisition, so the total cost for me to buy that property is £54,000, 150. Okay, just call it £54,000. Okay. Now compare that to renting. If I go to rent, I need 1 month's rent, 1 month's deposit, and my references. Call references what, £500, and call let's just say based on the same property, it would have cost me for a renter £1,200. So it would have cost them, £3,000, right, for just to get that property. So we're assuming that everybody has some fixed costs. So it's 2009. So there's some fixed costs that both parties have, which I'm not considering. So gas, electricity, water, council tax, the moving costs, the insurance. So one will have contents, one will have buildings. So we're just assuming those are relatively straightforward, very comparable. So we're just zeroing them out. There is no cost, right? That we're going to use for the purposes of this exercise. Now, so we'll just leave that for now, okay? So we've spent £54,000 to buy this property versus £3,000 to rent. Happy days. £3,000 sounds like a great opportunity right now. Cool. Now, over the 8 years, the amount of money I would have spent on interest only for my mortgage is £64,000 and 24 pounds. Let's call it £64,000. If I did repayments, which would have meant that I'm taking chunks out of the amount that I owe the lender, I would have spent £109,000, circa a few pounds, which I'll hopefully put up here. Yeah, cool. In 2015, I sold that property for £425,000. Cool. So, what did I owe the bank? I still owed them what I borrowed because I went for interest only, is what it is. So I owed them £216,000 of that 425. Yeah. However, if I went for capital repayments, I would have owed 146,000 and a few pence. Yeah? Now, when you look at the maths, okay, and when you compare, well, I did all the maths on this, and then I said, okay, what do I have in the bank? When I sell the property, what do I have left in the bank? Okay. Before I do that, I did one more maths. I did one more set of maths for you guys. So my total cost for the 8 years to own that home is £123,000 on interest only. And my total cost to rent that property over those 8 years is £116,000. Very close, right? But if I did repayment, that was on interest only for the 123k. On repayments, if I did repayments, it would have cost me £163,000. Okay, so bit of a difference. So let's just say, it's quite comparable interest only to the interest only rate to what I would have spent on rent. Okay, there's hardly anything in it. What are we talking about here? Like £8,000 or so, right? So at the end of those 8 years, what happens? You still, if you're renting, you still have to live somewhere. You have to rent somewhere. You move on. Cool. At the end of those 8 years, if I did interest only, which I did, we're talking about £206,000 in my bank. So I've sold the property. You've been thrown out because I kicked you out because I need my property because I'm selling it. I now have £206,000 in my bank. So that's my 54k back and some. Now, if I did repayments only, I would have had £175,000 in my bank. What would I have had in my bank if I rented it? Nothing. So I did the maths on this, and it's very clear to see. There is no way in God's green earth that renting is better than buying. In no way, shape or form. It's not possible. Even if the capital growth, I had a great area, I had a great location, yes, yes, yes. But even if the growth, if you need to look at the national stats, history tells us that property grows, especially in major cities. There is no way that renting beats buying. Now, the renters, cool, it's down to circumstance, down to preference, etc. Now, the renters might say, oh, but I'm going to buy, but not just now. You can't have it both ways, right? One is better than the other. Based on circumstance, you may want to rent now. Fine. We get that. But it's not better than buying, okay? And I just cannot see any argument for it. Now, the argument I was getting when people were saying renting versus buying was, oh, the ability to move around. Well, how about this? How about you buy that property and you rent it to somebody else and you can still move around? Because you know what's going to happen at the end of that? 8 years, 9 years, 10 years. When you come to sell it, you got another 200k in your pocket, right? So you still have that flexibility of moving around. So we're talking about a £54,000 outlay, yeah? Sorry, I added some other maths in here. So I added ground rent, service charge, a few other bits and pieces for the homeowner living in the home. But the people that said to me, the ability to move quickly, rent your property out. Rent it out and move around as you feel free. But if you have the capital to buy, then you should buy. Yeah. With this said, my disclaimer, I'm not a financial advisor. Please seek professional advice. I'm basing this on my experience. Okay. But this is my experience and this is the facts. I can't see the argument for it and I'm struggling. I got so many comments about, yeah, but the boiler breaks down, this happens, that happens. This is just, that's fine. These are costs that, this is what happens. But your boiler ain't breaking down every week. And if you've got a boiler that breaks down every week, you got to buy a new boiler. And I just cannot see it. So we're talking about if you were renting your home, £116,000 lost, unrecoverable costs. Unrecoverable costs. £116,000. Yeah? Oh, and by the way, because I'm the landlord for you and I know you like my place, how about a rent increase every year? Yeah? Anyway. Next, we're talking about when you own the property. At the end of those 8 years, I have in my bank anywhere between £206,000 and £275,000. I spent 54k. Yes, I did upfront, or not upfront, but I spent 54k over 8 years, including my deposit, including my maintenance. So, yes, someone's going to give me some smart answer. Their company rents it for them or gives them back the money. Well, good for your company because they're getting the capital growth and capital appreciation, yeah? Well, I'm sure there's going to be lots of comments, but this applies for 9 out of 10 scenarios, okay? And even if you're in low growth areas, there will be some capital growth. There will be some bumps in the road. There's Brexit, there's coronavirus, there's so many more things that will happen that will have some, your property to fluctuate in its cost. But look at the history. Don't look at what I'm telling you. Look at history. Look at the facts. Look at the stats. What is the capital? What is the appreciation of property in that area? And that is it. Hopefully, I've been able to give you guys some clarity on my thoughts and feelings on renting versus buying. And hopefully you can see where I stand on this. Buying all the time. And again, renting serves its purpose. And sometimes circumstance means we have to rent. That is life. But do not confuse that with it's better than buying, because it's not. Okay? Now, hopefully it's been useful to you guys. Again, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not qualified to give financial advice. I'm merely giving you my opinion and based on my personal experience. Hopefully that's been useful. Let me know if you guys like the content. I've got so many more property related examples to give you guys. If you like it, smash the like button, smash the share button, and I'll see you next time.